When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings, this is Kotobukijake. I'm coming to you solo today to do a special video that I've been wanting to do for a while. I debated exactly when I should launch into this video. I kind of wanted to do short-term ones with each book I got through, but I don't get too many times to film, and I finally got the 10 Great American Read books done for the summer that I was going to do for the summer. So it seemed like a good time to do a short video about short as I can make it, I promise, about the Great American Read. And we've talked about this on the channel. It's a big thing that PBS is doing. They've got this big program. There's a big finale, I guess, coming up soon. I guess they're announcing the winner with the finale, but basically the gist of it is 100 books and or series were chosen by a process. Many people have debated what that process may have been, but they chose a wide range of books. Not wide enough, if you ask me, but they did try to get some diversity in terms of the authors. You got a lot of female authors, a lot of male authors. You got several African-American authors. You've got, I think, a straight African author. You've got a few Latino authors, although some big ones are missing. They almost totally left out Asian authors, though. I'm very annoyed. Amy Tan's The Joy Luck Club made the list, but almost nobody else. Not even Kazuo Ishiguro. I was shocked by that. Dude's a freaking Nobel laureate. But they also tried for age differences. There's essentially 10 kids' books on there, although a couple of them stretch the definition of kids' books. And about 10 decidedly YA books, young adult. So they tried for some variety. And when the list came out, I was amused and disappointed in myself that I had read for sure 23 of the books on the list. I had read the first book in a series that's on the list, so I counted as partial but not counted, and I had 5 with a question mark. And I had literally just started one of the books on the list. So I'm going to do a real quick rundown of those, and then I'll get into the meat of this, which is, at our library, we had a thing for the kids this year where we gave them goals. Or not, we didn't give them goals, we gave them rubber ducks if they set and achieved goals. So it was a fun little project. A lot of kids liked them. Even the little baby rubber ducks, I should have brought mine up to show you as a Minecraft duck, and nothing too exciting. Maybe I'll present it on a future video. But I finally reached my goal about a week ago, and the goal was to read 10 more books from the list by the end of summer. I sort of achieved it by the end of summer, but but anyway, the original ones that I had marked off: The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, The Call of the Wild by Jack London, Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, best novel ever written, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, The Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, The Godfather by Mario Puzo, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, The Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy, Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, The Martian by Andy Weir, Moby Dick by Herman Melville, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, The Stand by Stephen King, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The one that I marked as a partial was Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I didn't even realize it was a series until I started working in the library. I've read Hatchet, but none of the sequels. The ones I put a question mark by range from two that I really don't think I read, but I cannot swear to it, which are The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I have read 3 of his books, but I'm not sure about that one. And Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. One that I have no clue. Literally have no clue if I ever read Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. Probably read excerpts, but I have no clue. And 2 that I know for a fact I read excerpts, but I could not swear to it. I read the whole thing. Were Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Those were the ones that I had marked. Oh, and the one that I had marked that I had those were the ones I had marked to start. I had literally just started reading Ernest Cline's Ready Player One, which is a great book. And the movie was fun, but the book is better. But I managed to cross that off right away. And then I did my top 10. Or rather, the 10 that I added. All those ones that I read or just read off, they're all good books. They are worth reading. I did not enjoy reading Moby Dick. You'll probably be hard-pressed to find someone who says they did. And if they did, you might wonder if they're sanity. That said, Melville is not unreadable. I love his short story, Bartleby the Scrivener. I would prefer not to. I just love that. I also was not keen on Heart of Darkness, but it's an important book and it's worth reading. But some of these are just great, great books. And, but then we got the ones that I've added to the list. And I'm going to try to do them in order, and I'm going to try and do a brief review synopsis of them. Hopefully this will not be a super long video, but I just thought it would be really interesting to give at least a sort of an impression above and beyond what I may have mentioned in the vlogcasts and or what other videos we've done. I started off with Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, partly because I grew up on that animated movie, and it's a classic. When you're a kid, that is just such a great little film. And it really is a book for kids. I read it and I'm like, yeah, I should have read this as a kid. But it's a good book. It's well written. It's very entertaining. But it clearly is aimed at a younger age group, probably than any other one I read in this particular rundown. But I did it in part because it was short. And in part because, and I will admit, some of these were chosen for length as much as anything. I have others I really want to read. I actually have several of these others sitting on the shelf waiting to be read. But my choices in some cases had to do with length, just so that I could knock off a lot of them. Charlotte's Web was chosen in part because it's short. And it basically revolves around a pig named Wilbur and a spider named Charlotte. And the little girl that loves Wilbur and all the animals of the farm. And it's got a very sad ending, but a bittersweet ending. If you understand the natural world and the natural way of things. But when you're a kid, it's a sad ending. But I've always loved it. So that was the first one. And then I launched into one that I was way overdue on. I was way overdue on covering George Orwell's 1984. Actually, if Animal Farm had been on the list, I could have gone Charlotte's Web to Animal Farm, and it would have been a great... I still need to read that, sadly. Any English major worth their salt knows the term Orwellian. Anyone who really is into critical analysis of anything, of film, books, anything like that, they know the term Orwellian. And it's largely those two books that it comes from. Animal Farm and 1984 are both famous and notorious books. And I actually, in college or shortly after graduating, I don't remember, I actually watched the film 1984, which came out in 1984, and starred John Hurt as the main character. And it's a good film. I need to go back and see it again. It needs a Criterion release, frankly, because the film is hard to get, and it's the kind of film you'd think they would have put out by now. But the book is well known as a sort of, I think Orwell himself, if I remember correctly, I read a lot of the liner note. The book was part of the Everyman's Library series. I read a few of those. And if you take the time to read the additional stuff that comes with the books, they're pretty informative. But I think that Orwell kind of balked at this description, but a lot of people felt that 1984 was a highly, almost prophetic book, that it really gets to the nitty-gritty of things, and especially with today's current climate, not to get too political here, but we have an administration that has basically declared war on the media and the press. They basically declare everything they disagree with fake news. And to my mind, that is if that's not the forerunner to the Ministry of Truth, I don't know what is. And that scares the crap out of me. I'm going to be honest. That scares the crap out of me. The whole idea of the Ministry of Truth, they give some really good examples in 1984 about how short people's memories can be. Ooh, it's a disturbing book. But it is well done, and I enjoyed it. And, I was disturbed, but I enjoyed it. And then the next one I read, I may be getting a couple of these out of order, but I think I'm getting them in the right order. I do believe the next one I read was Looking for Alaska by John Green. John Green is very well known to people my age and younger. He, of course, wrote the book The Fault in Our Stars, which made a really great movie. I like the movie. He's written a couple others that have been turned into movies, like Paper Towns and some of the others. And The Fault in Our Stars and Paper Towns, Abundance of Catherines, these are really popular books. They're YA books. Almost all of his books are the young adult genre, age group, however you want to call it. And I'd never really read them before. I wanted to, but I was kind of, I'll get to it one of these days. But I felt like working in the library, he was one of the people I needed to read. So when one of his books showed up on the list, I didn't wait long to pick it up. And Looking for Alaska it's pretty flippin' awesome. It is. It's a good book. And I understand why it's been on so many reading lists in middle and, well, I think mostly high school, maybe middle school. It's some of the elements in it are rough for younger kids, but I do think that we don't give our kids enough credit. I really do. I think Americans treat kids like idiots, and most teens should have the emotional maturity to deal with Looking for Alaska. But it does get into some dark territory. But on the other hand, it really does get into the mentality and psychology of teens. And it's really good. It's really well done. It does have some tragedy. But it got me thinking. And I was into the book. I really was. And it was a short book. And that was one of the reasons I chose it. That and the importance of reading something by John Green. But I'm glad I did, and I'm glad I got it out of the way. I believe the next one I read was Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Well, Lucy Maud Montgomery. There were a lot of books on this list that were labeled series. And one of them baffled me, Hatchet. I also was a little baffled that they used for James Patterson the Alex Cross mysteries. That's so many books. But a lot of genuine series, only one book made the list. And I ended up with a couple of those on my read list before even realizing it. And one of them was Anne of Green Gables. There's at least 5 books in that series. And I have to tell you, after reading the first one, I want to read the others. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But Anne of Green Gables is a really good book. Really good book. And I sat there the whole time going, it would be so sweet if they made this into an anime. Not clicking in my brain that they already did. Isao Takahata and Hayao Miyazaki already brought that story to life back in the late 70s. We need that show to be on physical media here, now. Because I want to see it now. And I don't think it is available in this country. But it's well known among fans of classic anime. It had just slipped my brain. But I still would like to see I wouldn't say a more modernized version, but one more with the modern, like KyoAni type. I'd love to see KyoAni tackle that story. Or alternately, something like what I keep talking about with Harry Potter, like maybe some sort of a British company getting involved in making some anime or whatever. It'd be awesome. But back to the story. Anne of Green Gables is a really good story. Anne herself is a fascinating character, and the book is well written. And even though it's considered a juvenile book, it's like the Harry Potter and the Chronicles of Narnia. It's a book that can be enjoyed by all ages. I do believe that. I do believe that anyone who goes at the book with an open mind will enjoy it and probably not think of it as for kids. You know what I mean? And incidentally, let me clarify that Looking for Alaska is just as good for adults as it is for young adults. I mean, I'm a big YA reader. I'll admit, I'm a big YA reader. Some people might look down on that. I don't care. Because they're very eminently readable books, and they often are really well done. So, not always. Not always. I'm not trying to say they always are. But, at any rate, so Anne of Green Gables is pretty much about this orphan girl named Anne Shirley who gets adopted by a spinster brother and sister in a little podunk place up in... I want to say Newfoundland? Well, it's Eastern Canada, and I'm drawing a blank on exactly where, but it's a Canadian set book, which also is a little odd. You don't see that, or I haven't seen that too often, so that was kind of, I'm sure you see it a lot more than I've seen it, but that was a good little book. And there is a live action series that the movies are extremely popular at our library, and I guess I need to watch it one of these days. But at any rate, and I think there's a new, is it Netflix? There's a new series on one of the streaming services. I think it's Netflix. But anyway, the next one up, let's see, we've done 4. I'm almost certain the next one up was one that I've wanted to do for a while. And that was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And Daphne du Maurier's book was hugely popular on its release. David O. Selznick got a hold of it and fell in love with it and desperately wanted to make a movie. And he tapped Alfred Hitchcock to make the movie. If you have watched our videos recently, you've heard my review of the movie and my commentaries of the Criterion. I still need to go through and watch the Criterion bonus features. There's so many of them. But like the little leaflet that came with it, I told you guys that like Selznick hated what Hitchcock wanted to do with the movie. And he made no bones about it. He hated where Hitchcock wanted to go with the movie and fought him tooth and nail. And from what I understand, according to the memos included in that release, it looks like the finished product ended up being much closer to what Selznick wanted than what Hitchcock wanted. And the movie is pretty faithful to the book. It really is. It's not slavishly faithful, but it's pretty faithful. And it is a good movie. It is a very good movie. And definitely worth watching if you ever get the opportunity. And I can vouch for the quality, the visual quality of the Criterion release. It's a gorgeous transfer. So definitely worth checking out, but it's worth checking out the book too. It took me a while to read it. Small print, very dense language, what have you, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very well written book, and I'm glad I read it. Next up, we had... This is where things kind of started to fall apart in my memory in terms of when and where. I'm almost certain the next one was The Giver by Lois Lowry. Another one that was chosen in part because of its length. It was kind of a short book. But also just because it's so popular. They are always assigning this one in school and or something that school kids are choosing to read, or I don't know what the story is, but it's always getting checked out. And it seems like at least once a year people have trouble getting hold of it because too many people all at once. But this is another one that was actually a series. It was actually 4 books, but the Great American Read only cited the first book. I spoke with someone about this who said that the other books really aren't essential, that they're kind of afterthoughts, if you will, which is kind of a shame. But I enjoyed the first book, but I felt deeply unsatisfied by the ending, so I kind of do want to continue with the series. I've checked out the other 3 books. I'll be reading them soon. Maybe not all in one go. I may read a couple and then take a break and come back, or I may read one and take a break and come back. We'll see. But the first book was really good. It was a quick read. That one and Charlotte's Web, both of them, I finished in a day. The Giver probably took me twice as long as Charlotte's Web, but I finished it in one day. And it was a very interesting book. It's a kind of like 1984 and I guess Ready Player One. It's sort of a near future dystopia kind of book. In this one, it takes place a few generations after. Actually, this may not be near future. This was in the future. It takes place a few generations after what they call sameness, where basically somehow humanity created a way to make everything bland. And it moderated people's impulses. It made people more docile, more, And to help with this, kind of like the Ministry of Truth idea, the idea that people should not be able to think too deeply on their own, people were no longer able to study the past. And but there was a sort of an acknowledgement that the past should continue to exist in some way, shape, or form. So they figured out a way for one person, who they call the receiver, to be the repository for knowledge. And in The Giver, a young man is chosen to become the next receiver. And the title comes from, he brings up, he's like, well, if I'm the receiver now, then what does that make you? And the receiver says, well, you can call me the giver. So that's where that comes from. But it was a good book, and I'm glad I read it. Again, it helps me anytime I can deal with the really popular, well-known ones. I feel like it helps me at my job, but also as an English major, I just want to enjoy these stories that people know. The next one, I believe we're up to 7, right? The next one would be a book by Mark Haddon called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I love that title. The first time I came across that book, I was like, now that is a title. But I had no idea it was a big deal. And when it made the list, I was like, really? But I read it, and I can kind of see why. The book it's actually told in first person from the point of view of a young man who is autistic. And they did a really good job. I really do think, based on what I know of the syndrome, I guess is what they would call it. It's they researched it well and did a good job. And there is a lot of dark humor in there. There is a lot of very interesting way of seeing the world. There's not the anger. The only other book I can think of that was pretty much told from the point of view of a person who's probably autistic. I did read Winston Groom's Forrest Gump, and it's been years. I need to go back and read it. But when I first read it, I did not like it. It was so different from the movie. But now that I understand more about what they may have been going for with the book, I should probably go back and read it again. But it was The Curious Incident was a different book. It was a whole different experience from most of the stuff I've read. And it was a fairly quick read, too. I mean, it was very entertaining, and it went by pretty fast and pretty well. And again, very happy to have read that and gotten that knocked out. And that one was actually out of my personal collection. I have a lot of these books in my personal collection, and a lot of them I haven't read precisely because of that. Because, well, you can see, I've got such a backlog of media all the time that if I own it, there's less priority, and I've always got a big backlog of library media. There's less priority on the things I own in general. I need to work on that. But the next one up was also from actually there were two that kind of came together. I was reading one, and then another one came across the desk, and it was so short. I went ahead and sat down and read it, and then went back to the other one. But another one actually came from my collection. This is one, like 1984, is Big Time Cautionary Tale, and this is another future dystopia. I finally read Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. That is also a disturbing book. No two ways about it. That is a disturbing book, in large part because it seems so possible. Yeah, it really does. Not everything in the book is likely to be possible, but so much of it is. And I have some people who swear to me up and down that certain potential political futures could end up looking like this book, and I'm like, I don't know, hopefully you're overreacting, but it's a worrisome book, but it's very well written. Very well written. Offred is of Fred, I should say. I always thought it was Offred, and then I started reading it, and I realized it was of Fred. She is a very interesting character, and a very interesting vantage point by which to look at this world. And I really want to see this series now. I've heard such good things about the show, but after reading the book, it's like, I want to see this series. But again, be prepared if you have not yet read it, that it is pretty disturbing at times, and definitely will make you wonder and make you think. And while I was reading that, again, a very thin, short little book came across the desk, and that one was Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I don't do French, so I apologize if I mess that up. The Little Prince. The Little Prince is, of course, a famous kids book that I missed as a kid. I never had read it. I didn't know much about it. I read it, and basically I'm on my lunch break. I mean, the whole thing's like 80 pages long, and it's, not densely packed. I mean, it's a kid's book. It's got pictures and everything. It's well done. I enjoyed it. It may have been targeted at a very young audience, but I felt, in terms of the subject matter and language, it seemed less so than Charlotte's Web, I think. I enjoyed it, and like it's a very quick read, and I'm glad that I finally got it knocked out. I kind of wish I had read it when I was younger, but what can you do? And then I'm almost certain that brings me up to the last one. I'm just going to double check and make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, that brings me up to the last one. And the last one was White Teeth by Zadie Smith. I finished that about a week ago. I was going to talk about it on this week's vlogcast, but we did not get the opportunity because of weather. So I'm actually going to take a little bit longer to talk about that one than I have these other books, just to give you, I hope you don't mind. Zadie Smith's White Teeth is another one I was a little surprised made the list because I didn't realize it was such a big deal. But it was her first novel, and she has become a very popular writer, apparently, and is a very highly acclaimed writer. Some of her later novels have not gotten as much acclaim as White Teeth did, but that one, got a ton. But it centers around... well, the best way I can say it is that the novel exists in the gray areas between native and immigrant societies. If that's that's probably as good a way as any to say it. The main characters, you've got Archibald Jones, or Archie Jones, who is a 50-ish, schlubby, kind of, he folds paper for a living, former army, he had been in the British Army years ago, and he has lived a pretty weak and sad life until one night, shortly after being left by his wife, he meets a 20-something Jamaican named Clara, Clara. Oh, okay. My brain's going to play tricks on me here. Clara Bowden. And for whatever reason, the two of them kind of, I wouldn't really say fall for each other, but somehow they look at each other and say, yeah, they'll do. Well, he kind of falls for her, but she kind of looks at him and says, yeah, he'll do. And they get married a few weeks later. And then you have his old war buddy, Samad Iqbal, who, with his wife, jeez. Oh, man. Okay, I thought I was prepared to go into the character names. I cannot believe it. Anyway, him and his wife are Bangladeshi. And he has in his mind, a long and proud military tradition to live up to, even though the military hero he wants to live up to is someone that pretty much the rest of the world has forgotten and doesn't give a damn about. And a guy who apparently fired the first shot in an unsuccessful uprising against the British back in the day. And, died in disgrace not long after. But Sam, every chance he gets, he pontificates about his past and his military. And so he joined the army, of course, and he suffers a hand injury, but being a proud, practicing Muslim, which is something that vacillates dramatically as the series goes on. For one, he drinks. He will not get rid of the hand, even though it's useless. And so he has one crippled hand. And he had gone back home to Bangladesh, but eventually he came back to Britain, and he and Archie hook up and become best buds. And Clara and... it's an A. They end up getting knocked up at about the same time and kind of coincidentally just become friends. I think one of them makes the point that, our husbands spend so much time together, we might as well be friends, sort of, And they do. They become friends. And Sam's wife gives birth to twins, Magid and Milat. And Clara has a daughter, Irie. And they become kind of the focus as the series goes on. All of them are major characters. And then you get other characters, particularly the Chalfin family, who are so unique that they have their own brand of what they call Chalfanism, which is a way of life. Marcus Chalfan, Joyce, their daughter Josh, who happens to be in Irie and Milad's class and has a thing for Irie at first. And all of them, this story takes place over about, I'd say about 18 to 19 years, roughly. It ends in the middle of a scene, but there's a weird sort of dreamlike epilogue incorporated into the last scene. I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to give any spoilers or anything, but basically it was a really interesting way to finish off the book. And they, of course, skip well ahead and cover some of the... and there's a lot of flashbacks to not just Sam's ancestor, but Clara's mother, Hortense Bowden, had been born in the middle of a major earthquake in Jamaica. And Hortense is a pretty big character in the book. And there were some other... but the book really gets into what it's like to be an immigrant, what it's like to be of mixed race. It gets into the ideas of religious issues. I mean, again, Sam considers himself a proud Muslim, but he is a little hit or miss in his religious observations. And his sons go in almost opposite directions. I'm not going to specify how and where, but they go in very different directions. Clara was raised a Jehovah's Witness, so it gets into the Jehovah's Witness ideas. If all of this is fully accurate, I learned some things I never knew about Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's a really interesting, there's a lot of dialect included, which can make for a... sometimes you might want to sound out some of the phrases, you know what I mean? Particularly when they really get into the Jamaican patois and also some of the Cockney dialect. Some characters are... like, this is one kind of funny thing. There's or I think it's pretty funny. There's an Irish bar, an Irish pool room called O'Connell's that Sam and Archie spend most of their waking hours at, pretty much when they're not at work. And the guy who runs the bar, his name is Mickey, but he's, I don't remember if they said exactly if he was Arabic but he was not Irish. Let's put it that way. He was not Irish. And so that was one of the ways that they kind of played with the whole idea of cultural appropriation and that sort of thing. I can see why the book made the list. Definitely. Let's put it that way. In terms of the politics of race and everything, I can see why the book made the list. But it's also a sharply funny book. It's really worth reading. I enjoyed it. It took me longer than I would have liked because, to be honest, it's not a plot-driven book at all. It's very much a character-driven book, and I love character-driven books, but when they're character-driven with almost no plot, it's much harder for the book to hook you. You know what I mean? Like, I followed it up with a character-driven book, Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone, but it's also a plot-driven book. So that was one where character and plot worked together, and it hooked me, and I got through it a lot faster. White Teeth took a while because there wasn't much plot. You know, the things happened, but it's not a plot-driven book. So be aware of that going in. But anyway, so I think we pretty much covered what I have so far for this. I do have Chihoa Akebe's Things Fall Apart checked out from the library, and I intend to read it soon. And I also own quite a few. I picked up a copy of Wuthering Heights, so I'm going to get rid of that question mark soon. But the big one, the big one that I own that I gotta read is The Lord of the Rings. I mean, that was featured heavily in The Great Alone, but not to mention I love the movies. And And there's several other really good ones on here that I own that I need to read. I need to read The Hunger Games. I need to read The Lovely Bones. I need to read Gone Girl. I also own Game of Thrones, but only the first one. So that one I'm going to have to check out the later ones to finish that. I do own the Da Vinci Code, even though I don't have high hopes for it. I have a copy. So, yeah, there's a lot there that is coming. And I'm going to try to do videos probably for, maybe not for each book as I get through them, but maybe every 2 from here on out. I hope that works out. I hope you enjoyed this. I really do. I know some of our viewers have enjoyed the fact that we cover books as well as visual and audio media. I do try to read a lot, and I'm trying very hard to get, like, I love media in most of its forms, and, you know, I need to stop absorbing and start with the output more. But at any rate, like I said, I do hope you guys enjoyed this. I do hope that you will tune in for other future videos. And in the meantime, happy viewing and happy reading.
Bye.